Aleksandre Topuria is a star in the making. Topuria has his next fight set for UFC Qatar, and although a lot of fans are more focused on his brother Ilia Topuria, I'm here to tell you that Alexandre is not just the brother of a star fighter, he's a star within himself. But quickly, before we get the video started, my name is JuicyMMA, I make opinionated MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, as only 10% of you watching are actually subscribed. And also, if you guys want to support the channel even more, be sure to hit that join button. For members only live streams, members only videos, best bets, discounted merch, alongside with additional perks as well. But anyways, let's get into it. Typically, when you talk about brothers in the UFC, or brothers in any sport for that matter, there's clearly one that's better than the other. And the brother of a superstar in a particular sport usually isn't that great. A lot of times we see that. But when you talk about the Topuria brothers, in my opinion, I think they're both legit. For Ilia, it's very clear that he's legit. He's a double champ, he's one of, if not the best fighters in the UFC, and he's also potentially going for that third belt, becoming the first fighter ever to potentially become a 3-division champion. But for Aleksandre Topuria, even though his brother Ilia has been able to do so many great things and a lot of fans are more focused on him, at the same time, Aleksandre Topuria has a real chance to be great and a real chance to be very successful within the UFC, which is something that is pretty uncommon. As I said before, we typically don't see brothers that turn out to both be champions or brothers that turn out to both have a lot of success in that particular sport. But with the Topuria brothers, I think there is a great chance of that. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I feel that way? Why do I think Aleksandre Topuria has a chance to be very successful? Well, in my opinion, I think it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first and main factor I want to touch upon is the physicality. Because when you talk about Ilia Topuria, obviously he's been able to be super successful because he is very skilled. On the feet, he has one of, if not the best boxing games within the entire company, and on the ground, he's also tremendous as well, with his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu. But really what puts everything together for Ilia is the fact that he's so physical. He hits ridiculously hard, as well as being able to take a shot ridiculously well. And we saw that in his performances against Volkanovski, Holloway, as well as most recently Charles Oliveira. And for Alexandre, although I don't think his physicality is on the same level of Ilia's, at the same time I think he is very physical. In the few times that we saw him fight in the UFC thus far, he has looked really good in terms of his physicality. It seems like he hits pretty hard, it seems like he can take a shot really well, and also even in terms of his wrestling, it seems like he's very physically strong. So as I mentioned before, and as I mentioned in a lot of my videos, I think when you talk about a fighter who's very physical, they just have a natural advantage over their opponents, and a lot of times when you talk about really physical fighters, they tend to find themselves higher in their respective divisions in terms of rankings, and also they tend to find themselves to be champions, and I think Aleksandre Topuria has a real chance to accomplish both of those feats. Now the next factor for why I'm very high on Aleksandre Topuria is due to his versatility, because as I mentioned before, talking about his brother in Ilia, a big reason for why he's super successful is due to that versatility. On the feet, he's tremendous, but he's also great on the ground as well. And when you talk about Alexandre, he also has the ability to strike and grapple. Of course, coming into the UFC, he was more so known to be a grappler, and in his first fight within the company against Colby Thickness, he did show that wrestling ability off pretty significantly, but also at the same time, he showed a pretty good ability to strike, and strike at a relatively high level as well. So I do think when you're talking about a guy who's as physical as Topuria is, and also when you're talking about a guy who has the ability to both strike and grapple, I think that's a very high level fighter overall. Because a lot of times in a lot of these fights, depending on who you're going up against, you won't be able to establish your plan A. And in Alexandre's case, that's to wrestle. So if he isn't able to wrestle effectively, the fact that he does have really good striking to fall back on is a huge reason for why I'm super high on him, and is also a huge reason for why he was able to have success in the UFC thus far. Now the next factor for why I'm very high on Aleksandre Topuria is due to his fight IQ. Now fight IQ probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind when evaluating a fighter, but it is very important. There's been so many different fighters over the years in the UFC that had all the talent in the world, but if they didn't have the fight IQ to go alongside with that, they just weren't able to live up to their full potential. But when you talk about Aleksandre Topuria, I think obviously he has the skills as I mentioned before, but also on top of that, I think he has really good fight IQ. As although he hasn't fought in the UFC that much, the one time that we did see him in the company against Colby Thickness, it was very clear that he was making great decisions, as he did a really good job at timing up his takedown shots. He did a really good job at knowing when to strike, when to grapple. And when you have a guy of the caliber of an Aleksandre Topuria that has all the skill, all the physicality in the world, but also on top of that, he doesn't make mistakes and he makes really good decisions, all of a sudden a fighter like that becomes very difficult to beat. A lot of times when you talk about some of these higher level fighters losing, it's due to the fact that they make a mistake. But when you talk about Ilia Topuria, and of course in this case Aleksandre Topuria, it seems like they don't make very many mistakes at all in the octagon, which obviously is a huge factor. But another question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, how far do I think Aleksandre Topuria can get? Well, in my opinion, I really do feel as if he can become a UFC champion. When you look at his game overall, in terms of his skill, in terms of his physicality, in terms of his fight IQ, even in terms of his training camp, the guys that he trains with, it seems like he has all the pieces there for him to be very successful. And I'll even take it a step further. Not only do I believe Aleksandre Topuria has a real chance to become a champion at 135, down the line, I think there is a chance he can become a double champion like his brother. Because when you talk about Alexandre, he's a pretty big bantamweight, and the fact that he is a relatively similar size to his brother in Ilia leads me to believe that down the line in his career, there is a good chance that he'll eventually move up to 145. And if he is able to be successful at 135 and potentially become the champion, and if he is able to be successful and become the champion at 145, I wouldn't be totally shocked. I do think he has a skill to get there. Now, obviously, I am looking very far ahead at this point. He's literally only fought once in the company, and he's about to fight his second fight this weekend at UFC Qatar. But at the same time, as I said before, I just feel like everything is in place for him to be very successful, and I feel like everything is in place for him to become, at the bare minimum, a top 5 fighter at 135 and potentially even a champion at that weight class as well. But another question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, what is my official prediction for his fight at UFC Qatar against Bekzat? Well, in my opinion, I think Bekzat is probably one of, if not the most dangerous and difficult fights for Aleksandre Topuria to go up against this early on in his UFC career. Topuria is not even ranked yet, because when you look at Bekzat, he has a really good ability on the feet, as he is very dangerous, and he also has a pretty good ability to wrestle as well. And even when you look back at his UFC debut against Umar Nurmagomedov, he was able to have success, and he was even able to hurt Umar. But in lieu of all that, I do feel as if Aleksandre Topuria is a little bit more well-rounded than Bekzat. On the feet, I think Alexandre is going to be a lot more technical than Bekzat. I do think he is going to have a lot of success, land some big shots, and even if he was able to time it up effectively, I wouldn't be surprised if Aleksandre Topuria was able to have success in the wrestling as well. So overall, my official prediction for this matchup is I am leaning towards a decision victory for Aleksandre Topuria, although I do think Bekzat is going to be a difficult fight for him. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Aleksandre Topuria has a chance to become a double champ in the UFC, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.